Hey guys, welcome back to Concordia Jedi for another Q&A. It's been a while, so why don't we just dive right into it. From Diamond360, if you could choose any of the 9 Skywalker Saga movies to rewrite, which one would you choose? Your rewrite cannot alter or retcon anything in the other 8 films. If I were to do that, I don't know, the safest option would probably be to rewrite Phantom Menace, but I'd probably rewrite Attack of the Clones. I think it would just be a lot more fitting to rewrite a lot of the scenes with Anakin and Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme. Just the bare bones of Attack of the Clones is okay. For a story, it's just how a lot of it was executed and all the the branches that stem from it in different scenes. I'd probably rewrite Attack of the Clones. In a hypothetical scenario in which Cassius survived the events of Redeemed and lasted through the rise and fall of the First Order, how would he react to Ben Solo's fall to the dark side? Would he hate him similar to Vader, pity him, or something else? How would he react to learning Rey's true heritage and her choice to take the name of Skywalker? What about Liara, considering her relationship with Vader? So let's tackle this a bit at a time. Let's say Cassius did survive through the rise and fall of the First Order. He'd be a very old man by that point, probably in his 80s. How he would react to Ben Solo's fall to the dark side. I think he would obviously be, devastated, but I also feel like Cassius would have stepped away from the rest of the galaxy by this point. He probably would have set aside his saber well before Ben Solo's fall to the dark side. I have a feeling he, after everything that he's been through, he'd just kind of want to retire from the life of a Jedi. So he'd probably hear about it and he'd be very shocked and also hit with a serious case of deja vu of another Skywalker turning to the dark side, really? Would he hate him similar to Vader, pity him, or something else? If he knew the full story about Ben Solo's turn, I think he'd feel pity for him. He wouldn't be fully sympathetic to Ben Solo. He's still done a lot of terrible things. But I think he'd feel more sympathy for Kylo than he did for Anakin. How would he react to learning Rey's true heritage and her choice to take the name of Skywalker? I think Cassius would be supportive of that in the sense that he would understand that it's not necessarily your blood that defines you. It's not where you come from. It's the choices you make going forward. And I think he would be okay with her taking the Skywalker name, even though he would be sure to remind her, there's a lot of blood tied to that name as well. Like, whichever name you go by, it's your choices in the future that are going to shape how history looks upon that name. And number 3, do you have any favorite era of Star Wars? Old Republic, High Republic, pre-Clone Wars, Clone Wars, Dark Times, etc. I think the 2 that I enjoy the most are the Clone Wars era, mainly because that's what I grew up with. I grew up on the prequels. And probably the Dark Times. That era has always been interesting to me, of seeing how, before the rise of the rebellion and seeing how, surviving Jedi had to hide from the Empire, Vader hunting down, surviving Jedi, all that stuff. So those are my 2 favorites. Thank you for your questions. From Skywalker Academy. If Cassius met Obi-Wan post-Order 66, how would he have reacted? If he learned about Luke, what might happen? See, it's difficult to ask because I never had any intention of Cassius ever meeting Obi-Wan post-Order 66. If he did, my guess is because Cassius and Obi-Wan, depending on when they meet post-Order 66, if it's around the time of the Kenobi show, they both had about the same mindset at that time of stay hidden, don't make a scene, put the lightsaber aside, that kind of thing. Even though by this time Cassius was training Liara, it was still very much something he was doing in secret and trying to stay completely off the radar. If they talked to each other, it would be a very brief conversation and they'd both agree to go their separate ways to stay safe. And I don't think he would learn about Luke at all. I don't think Obi-Wan would tell him that. So that's how I think that would go. How hard is it to write dialogue and describe a lightsaber battle when making the Book of Cassius? That's one of the trickier parts for me because there's only so many ways you can describe a fight going on without it becoming repetitive, at least in my experience. There's writers out there like, I gush about this guy all the time, but Matthew Stover, the way he writes his duels in like the Revenge of the Sith novelization, it's just immaculate, and I'm nowhere near that level. But I'd say the one I'm probably the most proud of was probably Cassius' fight with Minister Tambin in Ashes of the Order. I think I really fleshed that one out well. But it is kind of difficult, at least for me to do. I should probably, look up some different terms for different attacks and all that different stuff. Just kind of add some more flavor to how I describe the action. If you could make a Star Wars video game, what would it be about? If I could make a Star Wars video game, I'd probably want it to be set before The Phantom Menace, taking place within the Republic, and I'd want you to, be able to make your own Jedi, your own character, and go on missions with your master. You train with your master throughout the game, and as it progresses, you eventually end up facing the trials, you become a knight, you can take a Padawan of your own, something that really would stretch out over a long period. Like, it would have to be a long game. If Sarah survived with Cassius, would they go into hiding together or try and face Vader? I think they would probably go into hiding, especially if this happens during Order 66. Let's say they fought Vader at the temple and they both managed to survive. They'd probably go into hiding immediately because they would see just how outmatched they are and that the rest of the Jedi are dead. It would be a situation where they would both want to, they wouldn't want to stay out of the fight, but they would realize this is the only way to stay safe, is we've got to hide. The reason that Cassius in Inner Storm went after Vader is because he was so overcome with grief and this desire for revenge on Anakin that it pushed him to do that. If he had Sarah with him, that desire would not be enough to push him to try and take on Vader again. Was there anything that inspired you to make the Book of Cassius? Well, Star Wars in general inspired me to make the Book of Cassius. Mainly, watching, the prequels growing up and the Clone Wars show. All of Star Wars, to some extent, influenced me to write the Book of Cassius. Thank you for your question. When is the next Slackjack video coming? Oh, this is from Jakey the Watcher. When is the next Slackjack video coming? It's been a while. It has been a while. I've just been focusing on 12 different projects all at once. I'm juggling so much right now. So I'm sorry it's been a while. I'm going to try to get back to that as soon as I can. From Leo Romer. What class of Jedi would suit Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, Ben Solo, Rey, and potentially Finn if he decided to join Rey's new Jedi Order? Luke strikes me as a guardian, kind of like his father was. Although, you could also make the argument for consular for Luke, because Luke seems more of a negotiate first, action second kind of guy, whereas Anakin was all about jumping into action and settling a conflict as quickly as possible. For Leia, I definitely see consular. She's very diplomatic, even though she knows how to fight, and she's more than capable of leading people into battle. She seems like someone who would try for diplomacy first. Ben Solo, guardian. Rey, with Rey being as, tech savvy as she is, and having all the different skills that she does have, I could see her fitting into the Sentinel class. And Finn, I'd say probably a guardian if he decided to join Rey's new Jedi Order. From Ultra Shadow 95. 1. What were your thoughts on Sonic X Shadow Generations as well as the Dark Beginnings prologue? And what would you say is your favorite aspect of each? So, I recently finished the game and I've S-ranked everything in Shadow's story. All the challenges, everything on hard mode. Got all the collectibles. I think there's only a couple trophies I have to get. I did the beat Devil Doom without taking any damage. It's such a fun game. I really, really loved Sonic X Shadow Generations, and it's really fun going back and playing Sonic Generations again. My favorite aspect of the game is probably, I'd say, just how many different paths there are in each stage. It's not just a linear path. There's so many different shortcuts you can take to trim off a little more time on your next run. It's so fun. I love the game. Fantastic game, probably in my top 5 Sonic games. As for the Dark Beginnings, my favorite aspect of those was just the animation style. It looked so great, and I really want to see more Sonic content like that in the future with that kind of animation style. Number 2, if Cassius was given the opportunity to revive one person out of Sarah, Corbin, Takai, and Juro with no strings attached, who would it be and why? I'd say probably Sarah. Sarah was the one who meant the most to Cassius. It would be between Sarah and Takai, but I think probably Sarah because they shared an actual deep, longing love with each other. And I feel like if he brought back Corbin, it would mainly be to bring him back for... He'd probably bring Corbin back if he knew that they had a chance to take on Vader. He'd know, there's only one person I would trust to help me with a fight like this. But I would say probably Sarah. Number 3. If you could have the powers, equipment, and abilities of any one fictional character, who would you choose? Probably Superman. I think that's the most common choice. Super strength, flying, X-ray vision, laser eyes, super speed, all that stuff. Yeah, probably Superman. Number 4. What would you say has been your favorite lightsaber fight to write in the Cassius series, and why that fight specifically? 2 that come to mind are, again, Cassius vs. Tambin in Ashes of the Order, mainly because I think that one was unique in that it was an actual sword fight. There were no lightsabers involved. I loved the setting of, fighting in this grand imperial palace while an entire city is rioting and trying to break in, almost like something like Hunchback of Notre Dame. I'd say that one's definitely up there. If I had to choose one absolute favorite, though, I would say probably Cassius and Dravok vs. Vader in Inner Storm. That one, I think, had the most drama, the most weight, had some of my favorite scenes to write, and I can't wait to redo that scene when we get to the remaster. And number 5, a bit of a random one, but who do you think would win between Darth Vader or Shadow the Hedgehog with no Chaos Emeralds on him, and why? I don't know. I don't tend to think about, fights between characters from different franchises all that much, but, Vader is, he's powerful, but I think Shadow might be Shadow might be too fast for him. We've seen Vader struggle against non-Force users before in, the comics and other series, so I think Shadow at least has a shot. I think it could go either way, but I guess I'd put my money on Shadow. From 212th Trooper, could Cassius survive Anakin's thesis? To which Diamond360 responds, I don't know, man, Cassius is strong, but when Anakin starts talking about dichotomy, it gets pretty dicey. Man. So... I don't know if Anakin would, or I don't know if Cassius would be able to survive that. Anakin's thesis, it's lethal. There's no feasible way of him getting out of that. Once Anakin goes into dichotomy, it's done. Cassius really doesn't have any chance after that. Thank you for your question. From Zack Attack, I'll start off with something simple. How has life been treating you? Do anything fun for Halloween? Yes, I did. Thomas visited from Wisconsin, my friend. We dressed up as Vader and Kylo Ren and handed out candy to the kids. Had a lot of fun doing that. Just kind of hung out, pretty easygoing Halloween. Saw some movies. Just in general, just relaxed and had fun. Number 2, out of all the Star Wars films, including Rogue One and Solo, if you had to choose just one to erase from existence, it will no longer exist in the trilogy. Which film would you choose and why? I I'd say probably either Attack of the Clones or Rogue One, because I think with Attack of the Clones, it, aside from, Anakin's relationship with Padme and seeing how the Clone Wars began, you're not really missing a whole lot. I think I could show someone just Revenge of the Sith, and they could piece together everything by themselves. And any questions they had could easily be answered. But with Rogue One, I feel that's probably the one you lose the least with. Because that was basically a story to just answer one question. And if you took that away, it's something that could be summed up in a sentence. So probably one of those two. What is your least favorite Star Wars novel you have read? The Jedi Prince Saga. That is by far the worst series I read. And I get, they were made for young adults. Well, I was a young adult when I read them, and I hated them. I absolutely despise them. They are corny, they are awkwardly written, they have super heavy-handed environmental messages. They're just bad. Like you don't like Rey Palpatine? How about Ken Palpatine? Yeah, Ken Palpatine. Yeah, count your blessings. Sorry, I just really don't like those books at all. Number 4. If a Jedi Apprentice Cassius and a Jedi Redeemed Cassius were suddenly teleported into a space and they're able to speak to one another, what do you think they would talk about? What do you think the conversation would be like? I think, the older Cassius would probably be trying to tell the younger Cassius about everything that goes down without, making him paranoid. But I think that the younger Cassius, with the older Cassius seeing him, it would kind of remind him of how much, hope and drive and ambition he once had. And I think they'd both, learn something from one another. From Ryan Simmons. Do you think fast food chains in the Star Wars universe have space stations scattered between the planets? I think it's definitely a certainty. I mean, there's probably not like a McDonald's, but I imagine there's, restaurant chains that, are spread across different planets. Like, I'd honestly be shocked if there wasn't. I might have to look that up. From Crusader. Any new Star Wars what-ifs in the making with the characters from the Book of Cassius interacting with movie characters? Not at the moment. Mainly because I don't know how wide of an audience there would be for something like that. It would definitely be fun to do, but it would be a lot of, time and effort going into a video that chances are maybe 100 people would watch. I'll test the waters maybe and we'll see. Thank you for your question. From ABZ496. Will we ever see If Vader Survived series again? Hope you are okay. I am okay. I am still working on part 3. And right now it's just a matter of putting the rest of the pieces together for the story and then coming up with a concrete release date. And when I know more, I will let you guys know. It has not been canceled. I am still working on it, but like I said, I'm also juggling like 12 other projects. And finally, from Clone Commander Caleb, what do you believe Cassius' biggest weakness is as a combatant? That's a tough one. I haven't really thought about it all that much, but if I had to choose, I'd say Cassius' biggest weakness as a combatant is probably that he is a very defensive fighter. And that can only get you so far in combat. Now, he's definitely balanced that out over time. He can be very aggressive when he needs to be. But Cassius always falls back on his Form 3 training when things get dicey. And that can only save him so much. And if we're talking older Cassius, one of his biggest weaknesses is that he, while on Dantooine, was there for 8 years and never even touched his saber. So he's probably not ever going to reach the level of physical prowess that he had before. But I guess, after training Liara and getting himself back into fighting shape, he probably got pretty close to that. I'd say his biggest weakness is he can be very defensive, and that'll only get you so far in a life or death situation. Anyway, that'll do it for this Q&A. Thank you guys for all your questions, and we'll see you next time.